Hola, me encuentro el día de hoy con Danielle Trussoni, autora de El Maestro y los Enigmas. It's a pleasure to meet you, Danny.
Thank you.
And it's so nice to have you here in Mexico.
I'm so excited to be here.
How are you feeling?
I am feeling great. We're going to the Zocalo Book Festival in a few hours, and it's been really fun to be here.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be amazing in the book fair. So I have some questions for you. So if you don't mind, we go with the questions.
Of
Is
course,
it okay?
of course.
The first question is, what can you tell us about you? Who's Danielle Trussoni?
Who is Danielle Trussoni? Well, as an author, I have been publishing for about 15 years. I've published 7 books. I'm known mostly for kind of mythological thrillers, fast-paced stories that use history and mythology to sort of create atmosphere. And my last book is called The Puzzle Master, which you have, and that book is one of my favorites. It's the beginning of a series, which I'll tell you about. I'm sure you have some questions about that book too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and talking about writing, how does this interest for the writing appear?
So I am one of those strange people who knew from a very early age what I wanted to do.
Okay.
When I was 7 or 8 years old, I was writing in notebooks, kind of always writing something, and I basically lived at the library. I was reading, and I found a community, I guess, around books. And so by the time I was 15 years old, I knew I wanted to write fiction. So I started writing then. It took me another 15 years to have a book published.
Okay.
I was 30 when I published my first book.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, the process was long, and I spent many years not knowing if I would ever have a book published. I went to a kind of famous writing school called the Iowa Writers Workshop, and when I was there, I wrote a novel, and that novel never got published. It was one that was submitted to, I think, 25 publishers. All of them said no. So this was a moment for me where I was like, okay, I wrote this novel, I spent years writing this novel, maybe this is not for me. But I decided to keep trying, and I wrote another book, and that was my first book that got published.
Okay.
So for any of you out there who are writing or painting or doing something in the arts or acting, and you wonder if you should keep going, you should just keep going. Because sometimes the breakthrough happens right after the worst rejection.
Oh, okay. And if you don't mind, what happened to that first novel that you wrote?
So the subject of that first novel was about my relationship with my family and my father. And so the book that I wrote after that was about the same topic, but it was nonfiction.
Okay.
It was a memoir.
Okay.
And that book got published, I think, for a lot of different reasons. At that time, people were very interested in reading true stories. So the subject matter and a lot of the things I talked about in that novel that didn't get published ended up in my book that got published. So I never published the novel. It just stayed in a drawer.
Just like Lowe's Media.
Lost, yeah.
Okay.
But it wasn't very good, right?
Oh, okay,
I mean,
okay.
that's another lesson for people, right? Sometimes you have to go through a process of learning in order to be good enough to get published, or if you're an artist, to have your work shown or something like that. Like, it takes time to develop a skill.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you got to publish your first novel.
Thank you.
Okay, well, and the next question, it's about The Puzzle Master, this book that we have in...
Do you want me to hold it?
Oh, yeah, thank you. This book that we have in here, The Puzzle Master. So, the question is, if you might tell us what's the book about?
Sure. So, The Puzzle Master, that's the name in English, El Maestro de los Enigmas in Spanish, is about this incredible character named Mike Brink, who I fell in love with. He was just a normal person like you or me, and when he was 17, he had an accident that damaged the left hemisphere of his brain, and he developed something called savant syndrome, which is an actual syndrome. It's a real thing. Only about 50 people in the world have ever had it, but it is real.
Okay.
And what it does is it alters your brain chemistry in a way that you develop a talent, like an extraordinary talent. Some people develop an ability to play incredible music. Like they didn't play the piano before, and then they sit down and they just understand it. I've read about one person who developed an ability to learn languages very fast. Like he could hear the language and then in a couple of weeks be fluent. That kind of thing. Well, so Mike Brink has this ability, but it's with patterns and puzzles and mathematics and memory. And so he is suddenly able to solve problems and crimes in some ways if it has to do with equations. So the book, that's a long way to just introduce you to the story, which is Mike Brink is asked to come to prison in New York where a prisoner has drawn a mysterious cipher, a puzzle, and nobody understands what it is, and he starts to figure it out, and as he does that, he solves the murder.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, well, I got lost, sorry. Talking about this idea, you said that you did a research about this syndrome, but besides that, what other things inspired you to create the Puzzle Master?
I was inspired by a lot of different things. One of the main elements of the book is also this character who gets caught up in a kind of supernatural element of religious experience. And so I did a lot of research in the Kabbalah. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a kind of Jewish mystical tradition that ends up in the book. So that was inspiring. There's also a porcelain doll in the book. You've gotten there. And it's a little bit scary. And that was inspired because I actually inherited a 19th century porcelain doll from my great-grandmother.
Oh, okay.
And I was very scared of it, so I wanted to write about it, so that was the other inspiration. Oh,
okay. So fiction and reality.
Exactly. I mean, that's one thing about my books is that I like to mix totally fictional elements with actual elements so that it feels real.
Oh, okay. So the whole experience. Okay. Well, okay. Well, I was reading this part of the book. I got interested because it said that it was sort of the silent patient mix with the Da Vinci Code and sort of Stephen King. So how does it feel to be compared to those kind of books to those writers who are well known in the thriller, in the horror industry?
It's a huge compliment. I was really happy that people saw a connection between my work and those writers' books. What I'm hoping is that as this series moves forward, people will look at my books and be like, oh, that's just Danielle Trussoni. Because it's like a mixture of things. It's not any one thing, right? It's kind of unique.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that, I'm influenced by those people maybe, but that it will become more of just my work.
Oh, okay. We hope that someday it'll be just Danielle Trussoni.
Yeah, let's hope.
Let's hope it. Okay, well, talking about specifically that part that it's Danielle Trussoni, that you are a woman, and the others that are mentioned in the back of the book are men. Are there any problems with the writing process of thriller, mostly being a woman?
That is such an interesting question because when I started writing a thriller, I didn't think there was any problem, right?
Okay.
Because my imagination goes where my imagination goes. But I've found, interestingly enough, through the publication process, that men, if you're writing a thriller that's kind of in that space, right, with a male protagonist, even though I do have female characters in the book, often men want to read other men.
Okay.
And there have been some studies done and some surveys where it shows that women will read male writers, right? And don't even think twice, but sometimes male readers don't like to read female authors, so that was surprising to me. But with the writing itself, no, the writing itself felt very natural. It feels like a form and a genre that's really perfect for me. So yeah, no, there was no problem that way. But in the reception, it's interesting. I feel like people think of certain genres as female and certain genres as male, and it's interesting to cross over and see what happens.
Okay, and how do you think this separation of male writers and female writers in the thriller books could be banished?
Oh God, good question. Well, I know that it's about being more open to women writers. And also, I wish more women writers would write male characters, frankly, right? So a lot of my friends and a lot of the people I know in the writing community are women writers who write only female characters. And, there's something really interesting about inhabiting the consciousness of a different kind of person than you are, which I find fascinating and one of the reasons that I like to write. So I'd also encourage male readers to just be more adventurous and don't see a female name and be like, oh no, that's not not for me, but to open up and try to read across genres and read women and other people that aren't like you.
Oh, okay, well, that's amazing. And talking about this thing that you said that you like to write male main characters, have you ever considered with the Puzzle Master series writing a female main character for the next books?
So I have another book coming, actually, in the series next year. I've just turned it into my publisher, and that has Mike Brink is sort of the main protagonist, but actually there are 3 women in the book that take up just as much space as Mike Brink. So while it's not just one woman as a main character, it's very much influenced by women, and also the main mystery is about a woman.
Okay.
So, and about, I don't want to give too much away, but about a mystery that happens in Japan. It's set in Japan and with Japanese women. So,
okay, amazing.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited about it. But yeah, you haven't gotten there in this book yet. Well, maybe you have, but there's a character named Rachel in the book who I really like, and I could see making her a main character in the series at some point, and just writing the entire story from her point of view. And I think it would be just as interesting and work just as well.
Oh, okay, well, that's amazing. I'm thrilled to read the second book now. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. If you could define your writing style with 3 words, which words would those be?
That's a tough one. Okay, I would say atmospheric, suspenseful, and mysterious. Okay, now why? Why?
Yeah.
Well, because I'm interested, and I always have been interested in the way that language transports us to someplace else. I'm not just interested in creating stories that are just like, he did this, he did that, right? I want to pull the reader into another place and another time and make them sort of feel like they've never been in that space before. So it becomes mysterious for them and suspenseful. And I'm also someone who came from a very literary tradition. Like, my influences are not really the influences that people said this book is like. My influences are, 19th century British literature, which I really love, and very literary writing. And so I bring that to a thriller sensibility and kind of create something that's a little bit different in terms of atmosphere and the feeling of the book.
Oh, okay. Well, now I'm curious. Would you mind talking about that inspiration that you actually had for the book?
You mean the 19th century?
Yeah, the 19th century.
So one of my favorite 19th century authors is named Wilkie Collins.
Okay.
I don't know if you know this author. He wrote a book called The Moonstone.
Oh, okay.
He also wrote a book called The Woman in White.
Yeah.
And in the late 19th century, he is credited with inventing the mystery novel. Sherlock Holmes did sort of short stories, right? That, or not the Sherlock Holmes series was short stories, and Arthur Conan Doyle created that kind of form. But really the long, descriptive, immersive novel was created by Wilkie Collins in the mystery genre and crime novel and crime genre. So he's someone I discovered when I was in my early 20s, and I've read everything he's written, and I just love what he does with that form. He's also very character-driven. So, while there's a mystery in the novels, what keeps the reader going is the characters and like falling in love with those characters. And that's something that I think I emulate with my books, and something I try to do is to make the characters very rich.
Okay, so you would say that your story is more about the characters than the story itself, or it's like a mix?
I think it's a mix, because even though I love writing about complicated and interesting characters, I'm very much someone who wanted, especially in this series, to create a book that you sit down and suddenly you're in it and you can't put it down, and it feels like you're going someplace and you want to know the answer. So I would say it's a good balance of both.
Oh, okay, amazing. You said that you were a bookworm since you were little, that you were writing in napkins. So, what are your rituals for writing nowadays?
Such a good question. I write every day except Sunday.
Oh, okay, why?
Yeah, because I feel that writing consistently every day for a number of hours, I write maybe I'm at my desk about 4 hours every day, will bring better results than just writing once a week.
Okay.
Because one, it takes the pressure off, right? If you're writing every day, if it doesn't happen one day, if you write something terrible one day, it's not such a big deal, because you know you're going back tomorrow, and maybe you'll, write that great sentence or that amazing chapter that you want to write. And the other reason is that I think for professional writers, if you have like word count goals, like if you have to write a book in a certain amount of time, for me, I get overwhelmed if I think of writing it very fast. So I want to take my time and write every day and be consistent.
Okay.
I guess I'm more, if you know the story of the turtle and the hare, I'm the turtle.
Okay.
But the result is that I can write books fairly quickly that way, rather than, I know other writers who like worry about it, and then they go away and write for 3 months, and then they come out with a book. But me, I try not to worry, and I write every day, and by the end of 6 months, I'll have a book.
Okay, well, that's amazing. Well, that'll be all for this interview. Thank you so much for answering these questions. Y pues, ya saben, El Maestro de los Enigmas está disponible en español y se viene la secuela. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Can I give you a hug?
Of course.